I gave people all the stuff they really needed. Social security checks, utility bills, TV guide.
I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, as always, your TV Guidance Counselor, and it's March. We've made it through 2 months of 2025. I didn't think it would happen, but we did it. Let's make it 3 in a row. I think we can all do it. And, you know, there's stuff to look forward to, like today's episode. Today's episode of the show is a really fun one. This is a musical artist, Miya Folick. She has a brand new record out. It actually came on Friday, the 28th, the final day of February, because it's not a leap year, called Erotica Veronica. It's really good. She has a bunch of records out, but this one specifically is very good. Definitely stream it, or even better, purchase it wherever you find fine records. Really like this record. A bunch of good records have come out this year, but this one is also very good. She's playing probably in your town in April. I know she's here in Boston at the Bright Music Hall, mid-April, something like that. But you can go to miyafolick.com and you can find all her tour dates there and links to buy her records and all that kind of stuff. And you should do that because she's very fun. I think she has an interesting story. She used to be an actor and her stuff's very cinematic. And we get into all that here. This is a non-TV guide issue. I like to mix it up a little bit, as you know. So we just kind of chat about being creative and trying to make a living in this world in 2025, doing something artistic and our inspirations and movies and TV and music. And it was a really nice chat. She's very fun. I really enjoyed this. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Miya Folick.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Live via satellite from Los Angeles. Miya, how are you?
Hi, Ken. I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's nice to be here.
I think that's the correct answer for everybody in 2025, regardless of location.
I know. I've had a couple interviews post LA fires, and or maybe not obviously, it is a truly devastating time for our city, especially for the people who lost their homes, but also for everyone else, and also for everyone else. Yeah. It's just devastating for anyone who cares about LA, who cares about our earth, who cares about our community at all. But I think what's interesting is people are like saying very kind things and checking in with me because I live in LA. And I'm like, yes, we are in like an acute level of stress right now in Los Angeles, but the whole country is also going through something collectively. We're not alone here. We're also not alone in being a city that's experienced a climate disaster. So I think it's like, yes, it's happening here right now, but then also like we had this.
Yeah, it's both sort of an unending series of like. Part of me feels like, and I swear I won't take us down this path the whole time, but as people who are artists and you pay attention to stuff more, we tend to have more empathy. We tend to be a little bit more absorbent of things that are going on around us, for better or worse. Really since like 2016, but especially since 2020, it feels like we're in the cautionary example timeline. Like we're no longer the main character. Like they'll be like this, it's like, it's a Christmas Carol and we're a ghost of Christmas future or something. It just feels there's no sort of respite.
Yeah, I think that's like an interesting way to look at it. And I think maybe a helpful way to reflect on it is like, no one is the main character, but also everyone is the main character. Like, I think that's a conversation I've been having with a lot of my friends, because I think there is this tendency, especially in these times of loss, when certain people are affected way more seriously, physically, emotionally, losing a home, losing a school, losing a loved one. Like there were lives lost in this fire.
Yeah.
And I think everyone who wasn't hit as hard has a tendency to say things like, yeah, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm really stressed out. But, it's not really my place to be. And while I understand that, and I also have some of that too, I was having lunch with my friend who is a new mother, like a relatively new mother, and also a new business owner, and she is very overwhelmed. And I don't think that the fact that the tragedy didn't hit her directly means she's not allowed to be overwhelmed. I think it makes sense that people are overwhelmed. It's very clear, it's become extremely clear over the last several years that we're living in. These kinds of climate disasters are going to keep happening. It doesn't seem like anyone's really safe.
No.
And yet there's still like full lives happening. There's still joy happening. There's still other sources of stress. People are breaking up. People are getting married. People are getting divorced. So like those things are still happening and you're still allowed to feel about them.
Of course. Yeah.
I think it's like, I understand that tendency. I have it too, to kind of like minimize my stress or not allow myself to have it. I think there's a difference between not centering yourself and like allowing yourself to have like work through whatever your own experience is without like you don't have to go on the internet and tell everybody how you're feeling,
right.
But it's okay to like share it with the people close to you or to your therapist or whoever, or to your journal if you don't have either of those other things,
Yeah, and it makes it difficult to like, be creative. And then it's your job, but also your passion, and you have to go out and you have to promote stuff, and you have to, people in LA still have to work and make things. And it's like, it almost because the contrasts are so extreme makes you feel way more extreme, because it's like, it's hard to reconcile all the stuff at once. I think has been my issue with it, at least.
Yeah. I mean, we already, even without something like this happening, it's hard to reconcile with everything that's happening
far gone
once.
anyway.
Like on any given day, there's just so much. We have access to so much information that spans time. I think that like overwhelms me sometimes too. I'm like, even if I didn't listen to the news at all, if all I did was like delve deeper into like history, there would still be an endless amount of information for me to access. And like, even if I completely ignored everything that was happening today, or if I went the opposite direction and ignored history, if all I ever tried to do was read every piece of news that came out today, it would be impossible. It's like, there's just crazy amounts of things happening. It definitely doesn't feel natural to know this much. And I think that, I don't know, I feel for everyone. It's an interesting time to live. I especially feel for kids right now. I don't know how they are doing.
I think you're a bit younger than me, but we're of similar age. And, I'm like, I didn't have daily, gun active shooter drills, and like school was miserable enough for me. Like I can't imagine with like all this other constant pressure. Like sure, like the World War III stuff, Cold War stuff was not fun, but it seems like nothing compared to what kids deal with now. But hey, I don't know.
We had drills at the school that I went to, but it always felt like make-believe. It didn't feel like we do this for this very specific reason and the threat is real. I think it just felt like, oh, we do this because we have to do it every year, once a year.
Right. It's like a fire drill. We've never had a fire here, but it's the same thing. 'Cause you grew up in Orange County, like just outside Orange County?
I grew up in Orange County, California. Yeah.
Okay. Which I know from like, I'm an old punk rock dude and was in like punk and hardcore bands. So that's like my entire sum total knowledge of Orange County is like,
Where
80s
are
punk
you
rock.
from originally? Are you from
Boston?
Okay,
Yeah,
you're
Boston.
born and raised. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I started in bands with like Dropkick Murphys and bands like that. But, we had a
Yeah.
huge scene in the 90s, like Julian Hatfield, Buffalo Tom, and all this stuff. Orange County, I think, skater punk.
Yes, yeah. That wasn't my scene at all.
No, I was going to say it's not reflected in what I hear in your music.
No. I was like very, very studious. Not that punk rock kids can't be studious, because I think
Great
you can be
graphing.
both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like didn't even know that was happening, to be honest. I feel like I read a lot. I was at the library a lot. I think when I describe myself as a kid, I tend to describe myself as like this huge nerd. And I think maybe socially I wasn't nerdy. I think I was like quite, I had a lot of friends or whatever. I think I got along with a lot of different types of people. But I think in terms of my interests, I was extremely nerdy. And I was spending a lot of time just like in my room drawing and reading books and doing my
Same.
homework. I was obsessed with doing my homework. I loved to do all my homework. And that was kind of and I played basketball. So I was just like
Right.
not at shows. I didn't even know they were happening. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do anything like that. So I was just not in the world. I was not in a world where people were telling me about these kinds of things.
Right. Even in the internet age, it wasn't the same like it is now. You still needed that sort of
No.
social circle to like that sort of cooler older brother aspect of like, here, check this out. And if you don't encounter that, it's just not there.
And I think my brother, I do have an older brother. I have two. I have two older full siblings and one older half sister, and so I'm the youngest. So I feel like there was like so much opportunity for one of them to be the person. Like my half sister is quite a bit older than me. But she was very cool. I just feel like nobody was telling me about music. But my brother's friend made him a mixed CD that I stole. And a lot of my music taste did come from that mixed CD.
What were some stuff on there?
It was like Radiohead and
Portishead? I hear some Portishead some stuff sometimes.
Oh, no, Portishead was not on that CD, but I do love Portishead. So, and honestly, I think, so on this CD, it was like Radiohead, Broken Social Scene. What else was on that CD? I think there was some Beck, I'm sure. That was like kind of that world.
Yep.
I think that a lot of my musical education of just like listening to music and figuring out what I like happened in college and in the years just after college. I wasn't seeking out music in that way when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I was studying voice. I studied classical voice. And I was like singing arias. And then, my mom would put on KERTH 101, which is our local, or maybe it's not, maybe it's national. I don't know. But
I think it's local, but I know. Yeah.
It's our local like oldies but goodies station. So I would just listen to that and like practice my arias. And I just didn't know anything about music. And then when I was in college, I got a job I got like a work study job on campus working for the music venues. And all of the other people who had this job were in the music school. I was like one of the only people who had this job who wasn't in the music school. And then through these people that I worked with who became my friends, I learned about music. And
Good peer pressure.
yeah. And also through like, I think at that point, you know, when I was growing up or when I was in high school, like we had MySpace.
Yeah.
We had LiveJournal. Like we could use
Angel Fire
AIM.
sites. Yeah. AIM, yeah.
But I wasn't like using the internet to discover music. And I think I didn't really start doing that until I was in college.
Was that in New York or in California? Because you did a couple of years in New York, right?
I did a couple years in New York. I would say it was both. It was just like, I think culturally I was quite, I don't want to say, I don't know. I think, well, I did a couple of years in New York and then I did a couple of years in LA. And I think there was just like, I was exposed to people who were from like all over the world and all over the country, and like people who were real music buffs who like knew everything. And yeah, it's so crazy to think that like in high school, it's not just that I didn't know about music, it's that I didn't seek it out.
Right.
Which is almost the weirder thing, is like, it's just weird that no part of me was like interested. I need it. But then it's so funny because in college, once people started showing me things that I really loved, then that like awoke something in me. But I still think, because I think I got such a late start, I still feel like I know a lot less about like the music canon than a lot of my friends do.
Do you feel like you have to catch up, or do you feel like okay with it? Like,
I think I used to feel like I had to catch up, and now I feel okay with it. I think I've come, as I get older, I just think I'm so much more comfortable and settled in what I like to do, what my process is, what works for me, but also in like what my strengths are and what my skills are and what I have to offer. And I think that I know many people who can throw out a million really accurate references for the right kind of drum tone that we're going for.
right.
And that's super useful. And I think that it's great to have people like that in the room. And I think that I'm more of a idea generator. Like I like to like go inside myself and bring something out that doesn't come from a reference, that it just comes from somewhere inside of me. And I think it's just like, people like that need people like me, and people like me need people like that.
It's true collaboration in that aspect. And you're probably also not self-censoring. Like, you know, as a big music nerd, when I would write stuff, I'd be like, that sounds too much like whatever, I'm not going to bother. But even if by the time it came out of you and the way you do stuff, it probably wouldn't sound like that. Like, you know, I'm like that with stand-up, where I'll write something and be like, this is such a Bob Newhart ripoff. And then I'll do it and I'd say that to someone, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? This is nothing like, but to me, it does. But when you do it, it doesn't come out that way. But sometimes you sort of cut stuff off from actually getting it out there if you are too hyper aware of what everything's derivative of.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, I think that's probably true about me. I think that at some point in my life, because we really only get one life, obviously. Or not obviously, maybe.
Well, breaking news, everybody.
But I think at some point, honestly, I think when I'm retired, then I want to like really learn about like the history of music. But right now, that's just not my main focus.
Right.
I think it would be cool to do that later. I think if like when I retire, I like suddenly become like an academic and I become an expert on
Right.
musical history. And then I also learn how to shred on guitar, like shred a solo.
No, we all wish we could. Yeah.
That's like, I can imagine myself doing that when I'm like 65. But right now, I think I'm just like, I'm more interested. You know what's interesting? Like, I like, at this point, I'm honestly more interested in like, I want to watch more films. I think I've always, a lot of my inspiration doesn't actually come from music. It actually comes from like, I read
Your
a
stuff's
lot.
very cinematic. I was going to say that earlier.
Yeah.
It has like a real soundscape kind of vibe.
There's a lot. I love film references. I love to read books. I read a lot of novels. So I feel like a lot of my main sources of inspiration come from those places, and that's fine with me. I think I'm like, and then I can just like, my relationship to music, it ebbs and flows. I feel like there are times where I'm very, very into discovering new music, and I'm like, my favorite place to discover new music is Bandcamp, and I think that their curation is cool. I like to know what they're listening to. I'll like go and look at their they'll
New
do like
artists or whatever, or
like our
label
favorite
spotlights.
dance tracks, our favorite indie rock, or our favorite goth, whatever. I like listening to that. I also use Tidal, which I think is better for music discovery.
I do too, and the sound
Okay,
quality is
awesome.
better. I don't do Spotify. I'm a
Yeah.
Tidal guy.
I think Tidal's awesome because I feel like the music that it suggests to me actually has to do with my music taste and what I listen to, and it doesn't have to do with like what's popular.
Right.
Sometimes it'll feed me things where I'm like, I'll look at it and it like, no, like it's not, it's not like, it's like a kind of relatively unknown artist. I mean, sometimes it'll also feed me like Brat, but I'm not mad about it. But,
Right.
but I think it's probably because I do listen to pop music. So that makes sense. But yeah, so there's these times where I'm like pretty invested in finding new music. And then there's times where I barely listen to any music. And then there's times where I only listen to music that I'm familiar with. And then there's times that I only listen to ambient music. Like I only listen to music with no lyrics.
Do you find that they're tied to certain times? Like, when you're working on writing new stuff, are you only listening to stuff you've heard before, or you're not listening to anything? Or is it just kind of, there's no rhyme or reason to it? It's just moods catch you as they do.
I feel like, you know what? I honestly think that it has to do somewhat with my menstrual cycle.
Fair enough. I've heard stranger things.
I know, like, you've never experienced this, I imagine, but
No, not that I know of.
there's like, I do have an like auditory sensitivity that is part of me, of like my period.
Sure.
To me. And so during those times, it's hard for me to listen to music, or if I listen to music, I need to listen to something that I know I love. It's interesting because even when I'm making music, I know that if I'm on my period, it's not a good time to like listen to a mix.
Right.
Because I'm not going to like it.
Right. At least you're not aware of it, though, because some people wouldn't be.
It's like hi-hats are way too harsh. Like all cymbals, I can't handle them. So I think it has a little bit to do with that. And then I do think when I'm making music, when I'm in the period of like music production, I don't listen to very much music at all. Or when I do, it's something like, have you listened to that album, The Pearl, the Brian Eno
Yes.
album?
Yeah. So you want like some ambient
like
kind of music for
ambient,
airports. Yeah.
Ambient music, but also ambient music that I'm deeply familiar with. Like I've listened to that probably 1,000 times. So Yeah. And then I think that I think the times when I'm listening to a lot of music I think that's harder to pin down. I think part of it is like, I would consider myself a person who's like on the cusp of introverted and extroverted. And I think that the times in which I'm feeling very extroverted are the same times that I'm like wanting to listen to new music. I think it's like when I'm feeling open to the world, and then sometimes I'm feeling like more closed off. And when I say closed off, I don't mean it with a negative connotation. I just mean like I'm more insular.
Gotta
I'm
recharge,
on the side. I need to recharge. I also listen to a lot of podcasts too. So I think that I'll go through phases where I'm kind of like just listening to podcasts and not music.
What are some of your podcasts?
Well, I'm going through a period of trying not to listen to podcasts as much.
Are you trying to avoid what's going on in the world? Yeah.
Well, because I think that I really need time of like empty time where I'm not listening to anything and I'm allowing my mind to wander. And I think I will go through phases where I'm kind of unconsciously, just like mindlessly throwing something on for me to listen to. And it doesn't give me that time for like my mind to wander and for like me to, I think what happens when my mind wanders is I not only generate new ideas, but it's like, I think it allows my brain to like rest and then have the energy to have ideas later. But when I listen to podcasts, I think I listen to the Ezra Klein Show. I listen to The Daily sometimes. I'll listen to like Democracy Now. I love this podcast called Heavyweight.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
No, I'm not familiar.
I think to me, so there used to be this podcast called Mystery Show, and I believe there was only one season, and it was amazing. And to me, I feel like Heavyweight kind of picks up, like, is like part of that same lineage.
Okay.
But the idea of Heavyweight is basically, people come in with these unresolved issues, and a lot of them they're like issues of the heart.
Right. So it's almost like a focus, kind of this American Life-y type thing.
Yes. Except the host, Jonathan Goldman, and now I'm like second guessing if that's his name.
I'll just go back and dub it in if you don't.
Let's just call him Jonathan, because I know that's definitely his first name. So the host, Jonathan, guides them through it. And I think what makes the podcast so good is that he takes this unresolved issue and he tries to help them with it. But along the way, they'll just get sidetracked by these other little side stories or side details. And I think that's what makes it so fun to listen to. So it's
unexpected.
It's like,
you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, and it's about like Jonathan's personality too. He's kind of like, it's interesting because I think in certain ways he's like the perfect person to help people with these issues, but in other ways he's like, it doesn't make sense that he's helping them, because at least his personality on the podcast is that of a person who's not necessarily so great at navigating their own life or their own interactions.
Heal thyself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that that's like part of the whole shtick. I think he'd be aware of that.
But it's still like human stories. It's like
it's human stories, and it like you get like caught up in this little minutia of people's lives, and these little like side characters become main characters, and everybody matters. And I think it's like, it's really fun to listen to. I love it. There aren't that many episodes. I think I've never made a podcast, but it seems like podcasts like that, where there's research, there's other people involved. A lot of these episodes take a lot of time to make.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a hard podcast to make. So I think there aren't that many episodes. So whenever one comes out, I'm like extremely excited to hear it.
It's like a new album dropped.
Yeah. And I have a real soft spot for Dave Chang.
The Mamafuka guy?
Yeah. He has a podcast.
I like him as well.
I really developed a parasocial relationship with him during the pandemic. He kind of reminds me of my brother in a certain way, though he's nothing like my brother at all. But maybe he reminds me of somebody who could be my brother. And so there's something very comforting about listening to his podcast. Lately, they've been starting to talk about sports a lot, and I don't care about sports at all.
Yeah,
so
shut right down.
I haven't been listening to it as much, and because I don't care about sports.
Yeah, I loved his food shows because they were like just as much about him as, you know, like Korean restaurants in LA or whatever. They were just like very interesting because to sort of circle back and go back a little bit when we were talking about, you know, movies and things that inspire you more. You know, you're in Orange County, which is technically, I think, in LA County, but probably feels a million miles away. Like you weren't going to LA and stuff as a kid or anything.
No, they're separate counties.
Okay.
They're two different counties. Yeah. I was not going to LA for anything cool. Well, in hindsight, it was cool, but it wasn't like cool socially. I would come up to LA sometimes for basketball tournaments, and then I would come up to LA because at a certain point, one of my uncles is very into classical music, and he and one of his friends introduced me to this organization called the Classical Singers Association, and they would have master classes with opera singers at the music center downtown.
Oh, wow.
And so sometimes my parents would bring me to these events, like pretty often. It was really, really cool. Super duper dorky.
But you're downtown though, so you're not in Hollywood. Like you're in the belly of the beast in downtown LA. Like that's the city.
Yeah, I think what's funny is people will be like, so did you come up to LA to go to shows? And they're imagining me like going to the Roxy or something, the Troubadour. And I'm like, no, but I did go to master classes at the music center for the Classical Singers Association.
And they got pretty crazy.
There were, let me tell you, a lot of black turtlenecks. Yeah,
I bet.
And I think like a really sweet detail about this is that after going for a couple times, my dad started wearing black turtlenecks as well.
It's a good idea. Chins will be stroked. Yes.
Like he never really wore them to anything else, but suddenly he appeared wearing a black turtleneck.
He's got the uniform.
Yeah, it was very cute. But yeah, I think I couldn't have felt further from the city. It was not, I did not grow, I had a deeply suburban upbringing.
But at one point you wanted to going to acting? Didn't you go to school for that originally? Like you wanted to study
Yeah,
acting?
I did. I studied acting in college and kind of tried to do that. I say tried with a very loose definition of try.
Right.
I think I like pretty quickly post college realized that I didn't really have it in me to do the whole auditioning thing.
It's brutal.
It was very brutal. I had this like terrible agent. I really don't remember his name. I doubt he still works. I just like found it on like him on Craigslist or something.
Agent.
And I would go out on these auditions for these projects that were like not only just ill-suited for me and my personality, but also just straight up bad projects. And I just didn't care at all. And I think, honestly, I feel like quite impressed with my younger self to have the awareness to be like, okay, it seems like I don't care very much about this, because I'm watching my friends who are trying to do the same thing, like willing and able to put focused energy into each and every audition, even though the script was bad.
Right. Do you really want this job?
And I wasn't able to do that. And I think like I recognized, if I want to do this, I think I actually have to do that. Or I need to write something myself. So I need to either be willing to just like pay my dues and be in a bunch of weird projects, or I need to create something for myself. And I think that I, at the time, had been like kind of simultaneously was coming to like writing songs in my free time and realizing that I really, really liked to do that. So I think it was just like a very natural transition for me to be like, okay, I'm going to this audition that I've barely prepared for. And in the car on the way to the audition, I'm writing this song in my head. That seems to be what I care more about. And so I just like switched focus. I knew nothing about music at all. Like at all. So,
well, that's not true. You're going to the aria, master classes and the turtlenecks, you know?
Yeah. I think I knew nothing about the music industry.
Right.
And it was, I think that I kind of feel like, I mean, obviously I only have one life. We all only have one. So I don't know what it would have been like otherwise. But I think in certain ways it kind of benefited me that I was so green, because what I did was I just like threw myself into the music scene. Like I was going to shows every night by myself. I was like talking to people, I was just like so open to meeting people, so open to new music. I met so many people in that period of my life. And I'm not sure, like, if I had been making music since I was 12, if I would have had that same kind of like,
could have been jaded on it or been thinking about it too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, I still am interested in acting. I think when I quit acting, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to go about this a different way. But once I have an established career, which I like hopefully will have is whatever I'm doing, then maybe I'll be able to approach it from another vantage point. And so I think I've actually now started to audition a little bit.
Well, because it's performance. You know, you get some confidence in one area, and you realize that it's like transferable skills.
I also think there's something nice about it's not. I don't have the same like desperate.
You don't need
like,
it.
approach. I don't need it. I'm like, it would be nice. It would be fun. It would be like a new experience. But I'm not like devastated if I don't get a job. But yeah, it is something that I've been thinking about more. It's something that I'd like to focus on more in the next several years.
What were like your movies and TV? Like what were the things that first resonated with you that kind of even made you want to go in that direction?
You know what's funny is I think as a kid, I was like somewhat obsessed with like Breakfast at Tiffany's and like Audrey Hepburn.
Sure.
And I remember I had this like box set of Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. And I really loved them, but I think what really made me want to go in that direction was that we had like a pretty wonderful local community theater, and I was heavily involved with that as a kid. So I think it was more like from the theater that I was interested in becoming an actor rather than from anything that I was watching on TV. But now I think like the things that really inspire me or like make me want to make things are like, I love movies like Paris, Texas.
Wim Wenders stuff.
Yeah, Wim Wenders stuff. I like beautifully shot stories about like human beings. I like that's kind of I remember the first time I saw the Three Colors Trilogy, and that really inspired me. I feel like for maybe the first like 4 years of my music career, that was like every visual reference I give anyone was from those movies.
But I can hear that though. Like I hear some of like the band Tinder Sticks. Like I don't know if you know like Tinder Sticks at all.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, even some of like the Nick Cave stuff that's more like, you know, the Wings of Desire sort of stuff, like that realm.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like I think that honestly, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, I enjoy acting. I really like being a part of somebody else's vision. It's nice to not be the person in charge sometimes.
Right.
Because with my music project, it's not only like I'm the person with the vision, and I'm also the person inside of the vision, and I'm like,
right, and you're accountable. Like it's your name on it at the end of the day. Like, yeah.
And I'm both author and muse. So I think that I love being a part, like a cog in somebody else's wheel. It like feels really nice. But I think that what like I'm honestly probably more inspired. I'm like interested in filmmaking and maybe not necessarily acting. Like acting is interesting to me, but I think like filmmakers are amazing to me. Like they're like magicians. I don't know how they do it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
To make a movie, I don't know. I think that's something that I would love to do someday. Mostly because it boggles my mind that it can be done to like tell a story over so much time. Like there's so many places in a film in which you can just like drop the ball. You have to be so vigilant. And I think that I've been making music for long enough that I'm like, I don't consider myself a master of the craft yet, but I do think that I have a lot of experience in writing a certain type of song, and I feel like pretty good at it. I know how to do it. I feel like pretty confident that I can do it again. So I don't know. I think I'm at this point in my life where I'm like maybe interested in learning a new craft and having like a new experience. And I think to me, just like I think it's really, really cool to watch a film that could be both like where everything about it, the casting, the costuming, the quality of how it's filmed, how it's edited, how it's written, how it's directed, where everything conspires to make you feel something and maybe even question something or learn something or to simply laugh or be entertained. I think it's amazing to be able to like not only be like draw you from moment to moment to like bring you on this journey to make you want to continue watching the movie, just to simply make somebody want to continue to watch the movie at all.
Yeah, like phone down, lean in, like you're all in.
Like that, even that. And then on top of that, to move you or to make you think in a way you've never thought before. Like, I don't know. I think that's really, really cool.
I mean, that seems like a natural progression, though, because like what I take from your albums is you're sort of creating a mood and a vibe, right? And you're building an atmosphere. And when you think about it, even really good at that, that's one pillar of a movie. Like you've made the soundtrack. Now you have to do that level on 5 other things that all have to feed into each other. And it is kind of amazing that anyone ever makes a good movie because it does seem so overwhelming. But the best movies that do move me and like change the way I think or that I want to see over and over again, I do feel like you could isolate each art on its own, like turn the sound off and just watch it and like it. Just listen to the sound and like it. Just you could read the script and it's good. Like every aspect is sort of at this level where it's even greater than the sum of its parts. So that seems like a next step from sort of creating soundscapes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm always so impressed by like film crews, like all of the roles that aren't necessarily like the top of the call sheet kind of
the
roles.
below the line guys.
Yeah, the below the line. I don't know all the terms. The below the line guys who are just like so fucking good at their jobs. I think sometimes I think about this in terms of music versus film because music is different. There's like pop music that has huge budgets but for the most part, I think music is very underfunded. I think film probably also feels this way, but I think it's very different. There's like a small budget for a film is $1 million.
Yeah.
$1 million for an album is a huge budget.
Oh yeah, you're recording 6 months for $1 million.
Yeah. So I think about this and I get jealous sometimes because I think, well, there are many extremely talented engineers in Los Angeles, all over the country. But imagine how many talented engineers there would be if there was more money to pay people to focus on that job, because I think a lot of engineers that I know are not just engineers. They're engineers, they're producers, they're artists, they're players. They also play guitar on the road. I think what's cool about film and what's cool about the unions that you have is that people are able to like hyper focus on one job and get really fucking good at it. And that's why people can make amazing movies, because if you didn't have experts like all down the line, then you wouldn't be able to do it. And I think that like, I just think it would be so cool if there was more funding in order for more people to just hyper focus in music and like just be an engineer and be able to be in the studio all day long, and for there to be enough work for them to do that. I know there were eras of music in which that was possible.
Yeah, you could be a salary.
Right now isn't really one of them.
No, the only person I know who was like that was Steve Albini, and Steve was like literally the only person I can think of, which is what you described, where he had that skill set, but he also would like go win the World Series of poker every year to like fund the fact that he owned a studio, you know? And I mean, that guy was all about like his sliding scale of, you know, I charge Bush $2 million so that I can charge your band $500 to record in the same studio with the same skill set. Like if we had 100 Steve Albinis all over the country, we would have like what you just described, I think.
I don't know. I feel like there is a world in which this is possible. I just think that I think that money in music is allocated just incorrectly.
Yeah, I mean, that's all.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There is enough money in music for that to happen. It's just going to make rich people richer.
Yeah.
And that's it. So if we actually reallocated some of that money into like sustaining people's livelihoods, then I think we could have that. And wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah. I mean, I know people who, you know, went into debt because they had a major label album in the 90s, you know, and it was like, now you owe them money? Like, I don't understand how this happened. And it's very odd. And I think most people don't realize that that's how things are done. You know, they assume if you're making a living doing something creative, you must be really making a living. It's like, it's a slog, man. It's a blue collar gig, you know, and in some ways, it's harder because the thing that you love doing, like you're driven to do and is creativity. Sometimes when you make that how you make your living, it almost makes it even harder than if you had a 9-to-5 that you hated but was paying the bills.
I know, I've never done that, and I honestly think about it sometimes, but I'm not ready.
I did it because the thing that like all my friends moved to LA and New York to do stand up, and I always have kept a day job, and I was definitely lucky during COVID, and I felt super survivor's guilt about it. But the best thing about it is it allowed me to say no to things. Yeah, so I could only take gigs I wanted. I didn't have to do stand up at some dude's 50th reunion birthday party where they're like, make jokes about his wife and you know, like this stuff I just didn't want to do. And I'm glad for that. But yeah, at the same time, it can be a little soul sucking as well. So it's like grass is always greener, you know?
I don't know. Maybe someday I'll be forced into a 9-to-5.
Well, then you'll have something to retire from and you can become a music expert.
There's also something there is something appealing about it to just like have that kind of structure would be kind of nice. But
it's sort of inspiration.
Also love my freedom.
Yeah, it's sort of inspiration as well. Like we toured with this band once who were like an older English band, and the guy made a statement that I kind of thought was ridiculous, but also was kind of like, well, there's something to that. And he made this like black and white statement that the only good album every band makes is their first album. And the reason he said this was because you've had, you know, most of your life to have experiences to make that album, you know, 20 years, 30, whatever it is. And then after that, there's so much less life lived to draw from. And then you end up getting bands who are singing songs like, you know, their journey, talking, you know, the road's no place to raise a family, and singing songs about being in a band. And now you're not like connecting with people who actually have experiences. And I don't necessarily agree with them, because there's a lot of my favorite bands, their first album's garbage, and then like their second or third album, but the sentiment is kind of there, where, you know, there is something to be said for that inspiration of like just life and the stuff you have to do that's kind of crappy, and you're, you know, escaping in your head and creating stuff. So it's a weird kind of, sometimes you need one to have the other.
Yeah. I think that totally makes sense. I think that if I were to get a 9 to 5, it would be because I had to.
Right.
Like, I think that it's just really hard to be a musician right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like keeps getting harder.
Yeah.
And I do think that I actually would like it, because I think I just like generally like being alive.
Yeah. And also, it's like doing your homework, right?
Yeah. I think I'm just like, I would find something to like about it. I think I'm a generally positive person, but I don't know. I've never been tested in that particular way.
I believe in you. I think you could do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a thing that like every artist I know, not even just every artist, every musician, every person who works in a creative field, we are constantly talking about getting jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly talking about like, should I get a job? Should I go back to school? Do I need to get a job? Do I need to do like, because we just never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And I think that having some stability like that would be really nice.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, the people who I know that say, you know, we're very popular in the 90s, and they have, you know, they're like real estate agents now, or one of them's a doula now, and they still put out albums and still do music. And sometimes people will be like, oh, what did they spend all their money? And I'm like, no,
there wasn't that much.
There wasn't that much, and they're like a person that has to live a life, you know? Like, it's, you know...
who cares if they spent all their money?
Right. They made it either way, you know? I'm like, why are you shocked that that they're a person?
I think it's fine to do what you want with your money. You don't have to save it.
Yeah. I certainly don't save mine. What little I have. Well, to wrap up, is there anything that, you know, you're listening to a podcast, do you have like your go-to, like, is there like something you put on to go to sleep to? Like, is there like a veg out show or movie or whatever album that's like your kind of guilty pleasure's the wrong word, but I always say your sort of comfort thing?
So I can't fall asleep to TV. It's just like too disturbing for me. I try not to. I think I'm okay at sleeping. I'm not great, so I try to have pretty good sleep hygiene. Like, I wear an eye mask. I try not to look at bright lights. Or things go bad.
Yeah, no, I hear you there.
So I usually read, and I have this little. I don't even remember who makes it or what it's called. I have a little alarm clock that I use so that I don't have to look at my phone. And the alarm clock has different sounds on it. So I can pick like brown noise, white noise, forest sounds.
Yeah, thunderstorm, blah, blah. Like those ambient, yeah.
Yeah. And I tend to listen to brown noise. Brown noise, or there's one that's called like mountaintop or something. And it sounds like wind rustling through leaves. I really like that. I used to almost exclusively fall asleep to this thing, I don't know, person, artist on Spotify called Sleep Cove. And it's It's sleep hypnosis.
Okay.
But then I entered this new phase where I like can't even really listen to voices. It's too distracting, and also I don't like to look at my phone before I go to sleep. So it's like, so now all I have to do is press this button and brown noise will play.
Check out, yeah.
And it's and then I usually read until I feel like I'm fading. But I'm reading this book right now that I'm really enjoying by George Saunders, and it's, I guess it's based on a class that he teaches about Russian short stories. About their English translations. So it's not about the Russian of it all. It's about the craft of storytelling.
Gotcha.
He teaches it in English, where you read a story that he's chosen and then he kind of breaks it down for you. And it's really, really cool. I definitely recommend it for anyone who's interested in like learning more about the craft of storytelling, which I'm in.
Yeah, and you're more a nonfiction person than a fiction reader.
No, I would say I read primarily fiction.
Okay.
And then sometimes nonfiction. But I think like I'm definitely like a fiction person.
But I'm also a nerd for like story structure. Like there's a guy I had him on the show. He's a professor at NYU named Dr. Elliot Borenstein, and his main area of study is actually Russian propaganda. But he wrote a book called Marvel in the 70s, and it's about Marvel comics in the 70s and their narrative innovations and how kind of all mainstream, like golden age of TV and all this stuff is basically just drawing from these new narrative styles from these 70s comic books. And it's really smart, but also like a fun, easy read. And it definitely made me rethink like story structure and, something you're familiar with. And you're like, oh yeah, I never really took it apart, but he's right. That, that sort of stuff fascinates me.
I want to read that.
It's good.
That's interesting. I'm kind of having the same experience reading this book where I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't think I've actually ever read anything ever in my life.
Yeah. I need to go back and reread everything.
Not in the way that George Saunders reads.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think I haven't done that much reading of this kind of like the craft of storytelling stuff, but it's making me want to read more because I'm like, my eyes are being opened to all of these like nuances, patterns. It's very cool. It's very cool. And it's also a lot of things that like are applicable to songwriting too.
Yeah, it's acts and structure.
And production and like this, you create a pattern and then you deviate from that pattern, but you need to deviate for a reason. It can't just feel random. So there's like, you want things to escalate.
Right.
Like, yeah, I think that there's a lot of similarities and I'm finding it really fun to read.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you see. I feel like I've seen a lot of songwriters end up writing novels, like especially in the last couple of years. Like Susanna Hoffs from the Bangles wrote an amazing novel, and Nick Cave's written a bunch of novels, and and I'm like, oh, because they get structure and how to take you through a story, because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's just a novel is a lot longer than
a lot more work too. Yeah.
A lot more work.
As someone who started and never finished many things, it's a lot of work, but man. So I love the new record. It's kind of I wouldn't say it's less poppy than the last one, but it's definitely got more of like to me, it felt like a little bit more cinematic, like a more widescreen-ish to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's definitely less pop in its aesthetic, and it's like pop in like the sound of what we think of as like pop that's on the radio.
Right.
I think I have like a pop sensibility in my songwriting. I like melodies that are hooky, so I think that's still there.
Yeah, like Alaska's very almost like a classic country song hooky to me.
Yeah. In fact, when we play it live, sometimes I'll just do it on guitar. Me and my friend Jacob, who plays with me a lot, will just play it like dueling acoustics, and it does sound like a country song.
Yeah, it's like Jolene or something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm glad that you had the time to sit down and chat with me.
Thank you so much. It was really, really nice to meet you.
There you go. That's MiyaFolick.com. I put a link in the show description. Also on tvguidancecounselor.com. Go see her live, buy her records. You will not be disappointed. And then shoot me an email at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@icanread.com. I had a difficulty saying my own word, icanread.com. Let me know what you thought, or any of your thoughts. If there are other guests you'd like me to have on the show, send me an email, send me a message. If there are new albums out that you think I would enjoy, send me a message with that recommendation and I will check it out. I'm probably going to go see her live in April. If I leave the house, we shall see. But if you're going to go, let me know that as well. If you have a couple extra bucks and you want to be a patron, you can go to patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor. Little as $1 a month is a huge help for the show. $5 and up, you get a PDF of that week's TV guide when there is one. This week there isn't one. I apologize. Or, if there's something you would like in order to become a patron, let me know and I will do my best to accommodate you and make that happen. Also, I need to mention a couple bits of sad news. We lost Michelle Trachtenberg last week. It was only 39. That was very, very sad. Never had her on the show. Had spoken to her before. She was very sweet. And obviously from her Pete and Pete days alone, just amazing and an important part of the stuff I watched growing up, and I likely I guess that yours too. And Lynn Marie Stewart, who's Miss Yvonne. Had her on the show in 2017. If you have not heard that episode, go back and listen. I reposted it. Just a great human, really sweet lady, very talented, and it's sad to see people go, but nice that they have an amazing legacy of stuff that we can still watch and listen to. And she's one of those people. So just wanted to mention that. Didn't want to let you down on a down note, but thought it made sense to talk about that a little bit. If you want to talk about anything, let me know. You just message me on those things. And next week I'll have a brand new episode and hopefully no other sad updates, but you never know. I can't make any promises, but I'm going to try. So please be here next week because I'll be here for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Looks like you got some kind of alternate universe in there or something.